You know, sometimes in hip hop culture and rap culture, things don't go quite like you want them to. You know what I mean? Um, so that brings us back to another one of those disappointing moments in hip hop. I'm Daryl D. Thank you guys for hanging out. What I want to talk about today is rap concerts. I've been going to concerts since the mid 80s. And this was a time when the tours were humongous. Um, Nothing but A-list acts that are considered legendary today. Um, the tours were, so incredible. They were all held at big arenas. I was fortunate enough to be at the Raising Hell tour, which was Run DMC, Beastie Boys, Houdini, and LL Cool J. I was fortunate enough to go to the Dope Jam tour, which was Ice T, Kumo D, Biz Markie, Eric B. and Rakim, Big Daddy Kane. I think Dougie Fresh was on that tour. There were no opening acts or any of that stuff. I remember the LL Cool J Nitro tour, which was LL, Big Daddy Kane, Slick Rick, EPMD, and De La Soul. Um, just some crazy, crazy, exciting things. Um, I want to talk about the NWA tour that went by a few different names back in those days. I think was this the early '90s, somewhere in there. A lot of people don't know that the tour, and this is the same tour that was spoken about in the or that was featured in the Straight Outta Compton movie. That tour, I went to that tour when it came through Milwaukee. In addition to NWA and Easy E performing, there was also JJ Fad, there was Too Short, Chub Rock, Kid and Play, and I think that was it. But there was an opening act that nobody knew about and that nobody expected to be there. And that was the DOC. Yes, the DOC opened up that NWA show. I just remember the lights went down and you heard a voice say, "Hey, Milwaukee, if y'all supposed to be live, then stand up." And Milwaukee was like, "What?" Everybody's in the crowd. It's like, "What?" And this is at the Mecca Arena. The Mecca Arena held between 11 and 12,000, and it was completely packed. So everybody stands up like, "Who is that? Who's that talking like, who's talking crazy basically to us?" And then all you hear is, "Yeah, boom boom boom, boom boom boom, boom boom boom, boom boom boom," and then DOC, and back in those days they had the curtains that were, on the stage in these big humongous venues. So the curtains were still closed, and he just came from around, and he's got his classic outfit on where he's like just in all black. He's got a full length leather jacket on, black t-shirt. I don't remember what was on the t-shirt. And I forgot there was a comedian. I cannot think of that guy's name for the life of me. But there's this famous comedian who's still around today who was the host of that show. He appears actually in the It's Funky Enough video. Anyway, DOC comes out and he just starts performing It's Funky Enough. And I kid you not, by the time the second hook came in, you got like 11, 12,000 people yelling, "It's getting funky, it's getting funky, it's getting funky, it's getting funky." Like he had the whole arena tied around his finger at the time. And it was crazy. A great song. It was almost like the next day. When I was in high school, that's when Crush Groove came out. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let me in the theater because I was underage. So I didn't get to actually see it until it came on cable. But I remember it came out on a Friday, and then Monday, when I got back to school, the talk all over the school, and then later on, all on the street was, who is LL Cool J? Who is that LL Cool J dude? Nobody had seen him, maybe outside of New York or whatever. Nobody had heard of this dude. All the talk was there was this one scene where this one guy came in and he had on blue and he just, and that was the talk. So everybody was just like, who is that guy? Who is that guy? And then when radio had dropped, I Can't Live Without My Radio, people just went nuts. And I was like, after the movie. Well, that's the same response that happened when DOC, after the day after that concert about DOC. Nobody who knew who he was. Nobody had seen or heard of him before, but he was like the talk of the town after that. So, and he did It's Funky Enough, and then he did Mind Blowing. And man, when he performed that, it was crazy. It was explosive for somebody that nobody had ever heard of. That's how ill it was. So, yeah, he just did those two songs, and that was it, and bounced, and it was like, whoo, it was crazy. And then of course he was on stage with NWA while they were performing. I think it was him, Laylaw, and one or two other guys, and they're like playing dice or whatever while NWA is performing. It was a great show. So anyway, that show happens. His thing is going on. His first single, It's Funky Enough, finally drops, and he's like an instant star. Instantly. Because people were already all over, NWA and Ruthless and Priority. I mean, as soon as those guys touched down, on a countrywide level, people was just, they were on them just instantly. It was the same thing for DOC. Back then, Ruthless Records they weren't missing at all. So his first single comes out that goes crazy. The album drops, it goes bananas. He's doing single after single after single. And it's just monumental. So some time goes by. This is 1989, if I'm not mistaken. And the next thing you know, he is on another tour. So the tours back then, sometimes they had, what do you call it, official headliners, and sometimes they didn't. Like the Raising Hell tour, of course, that was Run DMC's, they're the headliners. The Nitro tour was LL Cool J, and so on and so forth. But shows like the Dope Jam tour and some of these other tours, there wasn't an official headliner. You just got whoever you got. I remember there was one show that featured, it was Queen Latifah, Tribe Called Quest, Naughty by Nature, Showbiz and AG, Stetsasonic. All these groups were on this one tour, but there was no headline. That's why back then in Milwaukee, in high school, the talk, the next school day would be, who do you think took the show last night? Because it wasn't an official headliner. Oh, I think so-and-so was better. No, I think so-and-so was better. And so on and so forth. So there was this tour that was coming, and it didn't have an official headliner, but it featured DOC, Slick Rick, Salt and Pepper, and then I believe it was EPMD. I think it was EPMD. Uh, uh, was it Big Daddy Kane? And I think it was who else was on there? There's another group. It was like 6 or 7 big name acts. Big name acts. So I remember the day. This was back when Ticketron was still around, and they would tell you how these tickets gonna sell. You know, at this day, at this time, at any Ticketron location. And there was where I was working at the time. There was a music store. It was called Mainstream Music, and they had a Ticketron outlet at their store. And I remember asking my boss, because I only worked like 5 minutes away, if I could, take a few minutes and leave work and go up there and buy me some tickets when they went on sale. And fortunately for me, he agreed. So I went up there, and I think I was number 3 or 4 in line. That's when I met Doc B for the first time, popular Milwaukee DJ, and he was right behind me in line. So I think I was 4 and he was 5. Anyway, I go up there, I get my tickets for the show, and guess what? It was the first time that I've ever gotten front row seats at a concert. I was absolutely ecstatic, and I think some of you know where this is going. But I was really excited, because me and my buddies back then, we used to just sneak up to the front. As soon as the lights go off, we up in the front. We running as far, but I've never been in the front row. So I was really happy about getting these tickets where I was in the front row. Um, go back to work, real excited, blah blah blah. And I think it was maybe a few weeks after that, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. Because back then, they would announce these tours way ahead of time, sometimes 2 months ahead of time. So it was some weeks that went by, maybe a month or so. And then it was announced that, yes, DOC was in a really bad car accident. And at the time, the news about his throat or vocal cords or whatever, that wasn't, a part of that, you know, news. It was just that he was in an accident. And he's alive, but he's in bad shape. And of course, the tour was canceled. It was canceled. The one time, the one time I got front row seats at this huge rap tour. And I kind of think it was really, his name was really, really out there in front because at the time, he was like the hottest name on that bill. And so it was sort of like we looked at it. To this day, I looked at that concert like that was his show, even though he wasn't an official headliner. It was not the DOC. No one can do it better. It wasn't anything like that. He was just one of many, but they was always mentioning him last. And of course, back then, the concert commercials were on the radio and TV and in the newspaper. So when they would play that on the radio, they would always play 3, 4, 5 songs by each artist, and that would get people like real pumped up and excited. Um, but yeah, I had to go and at some point get my money back, and it just never happened. And then later on, after that, it came out that he had lost his voice, and that pretty much, you know, put the kibosh on his career. I hope I use that word right. Anyway, um, you just it was just a really sad story, a sad situation, and I don't think. Matter of fact, I know for a fact I did not ever get front row tickets to another show until the mid 2000s. I think it was like maybe somewhere between 2010, 2015. when I went to an Erykah Badu show and I got front row. So all of that time I had never been able to get front row seats. And you're talking about dozens and dozens and dozens of shows in between those years. So yeah, that was a real sad ending, a worse ending for DOC, but a real sad ending, um, for me. And yeah, I absolutely throughout all of those years, got all of the vinyl from DOC. There's the album, one of my favorite album covers of all time. And this is kind of how he was dressed. You can kind of see that long jacket. It was just like that, how he was dressed that night. Um, that's the Funky Enough single. You know what I mean? And you got the Formula, of course, and Mind Blowing. One of my favorites, probably my favorite song um, from DOC. You got the DOC and the Doctor there. And then he came out with a second album. It was called Helter Skelter. They never released it on vinyl. They had like an album sampler. This was 1995 when it was released. And then they finally released the album in its entirety in 2022. I didn't even know. I had no idea. I didn't find out about that until recently. So I'm going to have to get my hands on that. So I don't have his second album. There's a 45 of Portrait of a Masterpiece, which is super duper rare. This is like a import. And then his third and final album to this day was called The Deuce. And there you have it right there, which kind of has that similar album cover from the first album cover. So yes, there you have it. DOC, and this is my disappointing moment in hip hop. I'll see you next time. Daryl D. Peace and love.